I found the buck. He's up on the rail.
I'm Steven Rinella from MeatEater, and these are some of the best and worst mule deer hunting moments of my life. I found that one of the most controversial things you can say to deer hunters is you can say that you like mule deer a lot more than whitetails, which always pisses off whitetail hunters. But I'm comfortable saying I like mule deer more than whitetails. And I can say it because I grew up hunting whitetails. That was the main big game animal we had growing up. In fact, for much of the time, it was the only big game animal we had growing up in Michigan. And we hunted whitetails archery, and we hunted whitetails rifle. And we kind of stupidly, looking back on it, hunted whitetails by dumping a bucket of acorns, buying reject carrots from the carrot farmers, picking up apples that fell out of the apple trees and apple orchards, and you dump them out in the woods. And then for the 2 weeks prior to archery season, you get all kinds of deer activity on the apples. You'd set up your tree stand. You'd have one morning of hot action, and then it'd be dead, and you'd go days and not see anything. And so I just grew up to be like kind of burned out on whitetails. It would work out, and we'd kill deer, but I wasn't doing it the way I should have been doing it. And so it wasn't as fun as it was once I moved out west and learned how to spot and stalk mule deer.
Dropped. Nice.
This right here is the first time we ever filmed a mule deer hunt, but by this point I've been hunting mule deer out west for not quite a decade, but for a bunch of years. And I loved it. I loved it because it was so different than how I grew up. The same way I imagine if you grew up spot and stalk mule deer hunting in the West, and then you moved to the Midwest and started whitetail hunting, especially like technical archery whitetail hunting, you might think that was the greatest thing in the world. So I love mule deer because it's just different than how I grew up. And now, you know, when I'm doing something and someone asks me like, what's your favorite hunt? The one fall hunt I could not live without is hunting mule deer, preferably hunting mule deer in the rut. This right here wound up being the first time I ever went hunting with the podcaster and comedian Joe Rogan. And this was actually the first hunt he ever went on. How this story goes is I always like to tell people, I pointed this out a bunch of times, that the first time I ever heard the name Joe Rogan and the first time I ever heard the word podcast, I'm serious, the first time I heard the word podcast was when my friend and colleague Helen Cho told me that I had been invited to go on the Joe Rogan podcast. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. And Helen was like, you are, I will go with you and we're gonna go do it. I go on Joe's show now, you know, once a year or whatever. And, you know, now it's kind of civilized where you go down there at 10 in the morning and do the show. Well, the first time I went on his show, I feel like we didn't start till like midnight, you know, but we just sat and talked about hunting. And he was getting curious about hunting. And so it worked out that I offered to take him out. And man, we had such a good time and laughed so hard. And the reason I wanted to take him mule deer hunting is because I had come to appreciate it by that point in my life. I had come to appreciate it more than anything else. And I knew it was the kind of thing that we were going to be able to go out and at least be seeing deer. That's a beauty of hunting mule deer in open country, is it might be like, you might not get anything, and you might be looking at deer that are on a neighboring ranch, but the thing is, like, you're generally gonna at least be seeing stuff. You know, you might not be able to go after it, but there's always gonna be like a level of action to it. You're gonna be seeing does, you're gonna be seeing bucks on, you know, across the fence, but you're gonna be looking at stuff. So I took him out there because I thought it'd be a good chance for a new hunter to at least have the experience of seeing some game around.
I'm gonna try to turn him. I don't know if it'll work. There you go.
You dropped him in his tracks. I can't believe it. You dropped him. I can't believe it. Wow. You know what? You got good control, man, because I saw you were going to do it, and then you thought twice and didn't, and then you caught your breath and stuff. Yeah. That was amazing. Good job, man.
Thanks, brother.
Joe went on to become, from there, like he made a bunch of other friends that like to hunt and became like a pretty accomplished hunter. But it was cool to be there in that kind of formative moment with someone who has done so much to change people's lives and advance all these conversations in the country. So it's kind of an honor to have that experience with him. This hunt here in central Idaho is where I learned like an extremely important lesson about mule deer. There's a 6-week rifle season in Montana. And at this time of my life, we would just hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt local, right? I had hunted dozens and dozens and dozens of days for mule deer in Montana. And not only that, I hunted dozens and dozens of days through the rut. And I'll talk about with mule deer, the difference between the rut and the not rut, which is huge. But I had scoured the state of Montana and hadn't found like a big mule deer buck. I now know why that is. Like Montana, it's over-the-counter mule deer. It's a 6-week season, and you can hunt them all through the rut, which basically means, it's not that there never are big bucks, but it basically means that Montana doesn't produce a lot of big bucks. This is not a theory. Go look at like Boone and Crockett entries for mule deer. There's certain states that crank out mule deer, Boone and Crockett bucks, and it's states where opportunity is very limited and they don't kill bucks during the rut, okay? So I had done all this time hunting in Montana, pounding the ground all over the place, and just can't find giant bucks. My first out-of-state mule deer hunt, the first day, I hadn't gone 3 miles, and I've seen a far bigger mule deer buck than I had seen way over 100 days of Montana mule deer hunting. And this is because you went to a state where they don't kill them through the rut and they limit the amount of opportunity, right? You got to just draw permits, limited permits.
Stay there. He just remembered the doe was there. She keeps flicking her tail and he can't resist.
If you go into my house now, I have this shelf of like where I put skulls. On that shelf, I have 4 big mule deer bucks hanging on that shelf. The shelf sits in Montana where I do my main mule deer hunting. I have 4 big bucks, like 180 plus bucks on a shelf. All of those bucks are not Montana bucks. And let me tell you, I haven't hunted outside of Montana that much. I love it here. I love all the opportunity we got. It's just not like a big mule deer state like other places are. I don't want to like spot burn here, so I'm gonna keep it pretty general. Colorado, Idaho, other states, Nevada, Utah, got big bucks. We got a lot of bucks, they got big bucks. This is the archery hunt in Nevada, early season, hotter than hell. And this is what in our crew, where we call it a skunker, meaning it's an episode where we go out and no one gets anything. At MeatEater, we kind of got known a little bit for like embracing skunkers. You know, where like people would say that other hunting shows, they wouldn't use episodes where they didn't get anything. And it wound up that people appreciated it because anyone that hunts a bunch knows about the experience of not getting anything. So we'd kind of dive into not getting anything. When I go out in the woods, I'm going out there to get something, but now and then it would happen. But anytime when it's mule deer season, I will go hunt mule deer. But mule deer, when they're not in the rut, it's just not as cool because they're you can pattern them a little bit, but they're kind of lazy, right? Like if it's hot out and it's early season, they're on their feet in the morning, they're gonna be feeding, They're gonna feed into some shaded areas. They're gonna lay down in the shaded areas. In the evening, as the sun's going down and the air temperature drops, they're gonna get out, they're gonna come feed. They'll probably feed in a slightly different path. Like now and then they'll be very patternable, but oftentimes it's like they hole up in a patch of timber and they feed out that way. Then the next day they feed out that way. And the next day they feed out that way. And instead of bedding here all the time, they bed here. And you think, well, tomorrow I'm gonna sit right there because that's where they bed. But then they bed over here. And it's this little game of cat and mouse. And you also have these huge times midday when there's nothing to do unless you want to risk trying to put the slip on them in their bed. But if you put the slip on them in their bed and blow them out, then you might screw your whole area up and bump them to a place you can't find them. Versus the rut, when they're just playing grab ass all day and chasing does all day all over the place, and it's just so much more fun. But this is early season. It's like very strategic. You know, you watch a deer, you try to figure out what he's gonna do, you lay around all day twiddling your thumbs, you try to put yourself in position where you might intercept them coming out, you get to your spot, you realize the wind's not right, you pull back, twiddle your thumbs, the next day see if you can make it happen. The thing is, you can kill huge bucks like that. It's just that I never have. Again, fun, but it ain't the rut. Now, here was a cool hunt hunting in Colorado. It's a limited draw area, which kind of equates to the fact that you could get a giant. I wound up getting a pretty cool buck on this. He's not like technically big, but he's just got some crazy different antlers going on. I still keep him hanging around. He's not on my like mega shelf, but he's on one of my shelves. This is also a pretty cool hunt because we're hunting in an area that has historically cranked out a bunch of giant mule deer. Like you get a lot of Boone and Crockett entries out of this certain little zone here, right? So every day you're going out, you might see an absolute giant. And in the past, Brody had killed some absolute giants here. It's all public land hunting, which I like. In fact, I keep referring to this sort of like my display where I have 4 big mule, like just what are big mule deer. Every one of those mule deer on that shelf is a public land mule deer. And this was a public land hunt down there. And we worked our asses off. It's not the rut, so it's hard work, but it paid off. And in the end, got a buck.
There's 3 does.
I'm fairly certain those are the deer that buck had been with earlier. Only 15 minutes left. Legal light. I found the buck.
He's up on the rail.
And my favorite thing about this is, you know, like dudes, and I'll say the same thing. If a dude kills a little buck, they'll be like, well, that's a good eating buck. Brody killed a little dinker forky, like a 1.5-year-old deer. I killed a mature mule deer. I don't know how old it was, 3 years old, 4 years old, whatever. The older, bigger one kind of had like he had a stank to him like a big mule deer. And so we're like joking, like, well, there's a meat buck and there's an antler buck. Well, on this trip, we took the meat from each and ate it raw. Okay, so no preparation, killed around the same time, ate the meat raw, and had a bunch of people taste it, okay? And the big, stinky antler buck scored higher and was everyone's favorite over the little buck. So it goes to show the next time someone tells you like you can't eat big mule deer, it's such bullshit. If I had to like eat one thing the rest of my life, and I could eat any part of it, I would select mule deer. Like I could happily live off mule deer meat and mule deer guts and water for the rest of my life. Here's another great mule deer state, which is Wyoming. I'm sorry, dudes in Wyoming, but Wyoming is a sweet mule deer state. And this is a sweet mule deer area in a sweet mule deer state, but we had a rough go. If you track Western mule deer hunting, and you kind of look on forums and you're connected with guides and you sort of just kind of like track the trends and I don't know how to put it. Yeah, the trends or the news around Western mule deer hunting. You'll see that states go up and down. I'm talking about big bucks, like finding big mule deer bucks. States go up and down. They have like hay days and they have, low days. Within that, certain mountain ranges and certain areas have ups and downs. It's driven by a bunch of things, but the main driver of ups and downs is the severity of weather, right? Mule deer are susceptible to winter kill. They're susceptible to really bad winters. When you get a winter where you get a ton of snow, and then you start getting heavy layers of crust on that snow, and that snow lingers into February and March, mule deer start to die. There's a saying, it's like winter weakens and spring kills. When you get big mule deer die-offs, it's usually because there's too much snow, there's a lot of crust on that snow, and they can't dig down through it to eat. And so if you see an area that gets like really hot on big bucks, what probably happened is you had a bunch of mild winters a few years ago, because you're trying to get these bucks that are 5 or 6 years old. So they need kind of a runway, right? If you wipe out all the fawns from a really bad winter, in 5 years, you have a gap in the age bracket. And not only that, but big bucks can still get killed by bad winters. And if you're trying to figure out where to go look for big bucks, you're sort of tracking these trends. This spot we were in was a spot that the top end, like the 5 and 6 year old bucks were kind of gone. It was a spot that had a real vibe like should have been here 2 years ago. We all day were looking at 2 and 3 year old bucks all day. I think some of those days we saw a dozen, 15 bucks a day, but you could not find big ones. It was so fun, man. And I don't think that a mule deer isn't cool if he isn't big, any of that. Like, I just love everything about mule deer. I love the little ones. But it was kind of funny to spend where you're just glassing buck after buck after buck after buck in a big buck unit, but can't find big bucks.
Just coming out to the left of the twin's neck. Go straight up. He's right below that. Feeding towards us. Boy, that is a nice buck.
Listen.
He didn't act like he was here.
I can't picture this.
I wound up finding a nice one, but it was one of those spots where you thought that like you might find, just Mr. Big Balls, like El Grande, like a giant. We were never turning them up, but I always remember it as such a great hunt because of the volume of bucks we looked at, and also because of how cool the guides were. This is the first time I'd ever been on a guided mule deer hunt. In fact, the only time still today, the only time I ever went on a guided mule deer hunt. And man, I learned a ton. And these guys from Crooked Sky Outfitters were so cool to hang out with. Later I went back and took my family. We did a pack trip with them to go fish trout. Just phenomenal, phenomenal dudes, like super hard workers, extremely ethical. Loved these guys. Here's hunting with Pete Alonso, a big-time baseball player, wins those, what's that called? Home run derbies. Nicest guy in the world, first baseman for the New York Mets. Being a baseball player is kind of funny because if you make it into the playoffs, it's kind of like it really eats into your hunting season, right? If you were a professional baseball player and you really wanted to hunt, you kind of have to root against your own team because you don't want to make it into the playoffs. Because once you make it into the playoffs, then you're like burning up hunting season. And so since Pete's always been in baseball, he's missed a lot of hunting seasons from playing baseball. So he loves to fish and he likes to hunt, but he hasn't gotten to do a lot of like fall deer hunting. But here he had a chance to take him out. He hadn't had a lot of experience with Western deer hunting, so there was a little bit of you kind of let some opportunities slip through your fingers. When someone's starting out, they're kind of reticent, and I like reticence. I like people who think before they shoot. But you might get an opportunity and it's fleeting, and I might think to myself, like, dude, I would have put a box of shells into that deer, and he never got a shot off. But it just goes with the territory because you're trying to have someone have a good experience. But on this, we like worked and worked and worked and worked and eventually had that great experience and got one.
Oh shit, it's a big buck. Right in this brown patch below us. A big mule deer. It's a nice buck. Right there, right there. Look with your naked eye. Look with your naked eye. It's a gray deer. Held right on its front shoulder. Right there. Okay, wait. As soon as it stops. There you go, right on the front shoulder. What are you doing? He's down. Nice shot, man. That's great, dude. He's down.
I became friends with Pete, and so my friends all know, they joke about how stupid I am about sports. But whenever Pete's kicking ass at something or something good happens to Pete, my friend Matt or various friends will text me that something good just happened to Pete, and then instead of lying to him and saying, "Hey, I'm watching you and I heard something good happen," I'll text him, "I heard about whatever, congratulations," because I don't want to carry on a fib. But we remain friends like that, and it's made me warm up. It's made me warm up to baseball. Man, here's one of those, when people say you should have been here yesterday, that's the old joke. You should have been here yesterday. Like hunts where you were here yesterday, like you were here on the day to be here. I had one of those hunting elk with Phelps, and I had one of those hunting mule deer with Phelps. We had a good chunk of time set aside to hunt, but like at the first day of hunting, at first light, like the second it gets light enough to look through a pair of binos, we're already looking at bucks that you kind of got to talk yourself out of shooting. And then we just looked at like giant buck, bucks all over the place. It was just awesome. This wound up being like a nice buck, man. Like we found that buck so quick. It kind of kills me because in hindsight, instead of just being glad about getting them, I wonder what would have happened if we'd have taken the week that we had cleared up and maybe extended it by a couple days and just pounded the ground the way we were hunting. I feel like we would have turned up some stuff because guys after us, I kept getting pictures of bucks that came out of this unit that were giants. It was one of those great deer years. Earlier I was talking about you got to kind of track units and see they go up and they go down. At that year, this unit was just good. They had to have the right weather conditions. They had the right kind of spring and summer, and just bucks all over.
I mean, I got him, but it's like, he's just behind a veil of brush. I'm just looking at him between the trunks of the black trees. I can see his tail. Now I can see his back.
He's gonna come back to he's walking straight away. He's going up to the right.
Yep.
There he is to the right.
Yeah, but it's just, I mean.
Just his face.
Yeah. What's that distance?
465.
Oh, man.
There's a deer out in front of him now. To the left, he's chasing.
Yeah, but it's just it's like I got too much. I guess I gotta, yeah.
Hit him. He's down. He rolled over on his back.
Yeah, I'm looking at him right now. He's not moving.
Nice shot, Steve. Congrats, buddy. That was a great buck.
That was cool, man.
The plan worked out.
It worked out great.
To come find him in the beds.
The trouble you get into, like here, me and Phelps right away find this nice buck. Let's say we let this buck slip and then we hunted all week and never found nothing. How devastated that you'd be that you hadn't gotten the one you got. And my dear friend Giannis always says, never pass up a buck on the first day that you'd be happy to have on the last day. And I try to stick to it, and that's how we have the buck that we have here, which is a great buck. But I do feel like, in hindsight, this could have been, this could have been an opportunity to get like just a ball buster, great, big, huge, giant mule deer buck, the likes of which do not exist. I think that in those mountains that year, I think that buck was probably out there. I don't know what happened to him, but I've come to think he was there, and I've come to wonder if I shouldn't have looked for him.